This is cool.
Right?
Yeah. I've been out here.
All right. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone, and thank you all so much for being here today. My name is Joe Neguse. I represent Northern and Western Colorado in the United States Congress, and it's a privilege to be joined here today by my colleagues, many of whom, of course, represent the Western United States, and in particular, our former and current federal wildland firefighters, folks that have served us on the front lines of disaster, every day making incredible sacrifices, and I'd be remiss if we didn't start today's press conference by thanking these brave individuals, and in particular the National Federation as well of federal employees, Randy Irwin, Max Alonzo, who you'll hear from in just a moment, for their partnership. So we're here this morning for a very simple reason. The United States is already experiencing its worst wildfire year in nearly a decade. Almost 3 million acres burned, record-breaking drought conditions in Colorado and far beyond, rising temperatures, and in my view and in the view of my colleagues, this warrants a comprehensive, strong legislative response on the part of our colleagues in the United States Congress. Unfortunately, tragically, right now, there are federal agencies responsible for key wildfire prevention, mitigation, and management programs that are experiencing irresponsible and reckless staffing and budget cuts that have dramatically, in my view, worsened working conditions for our wildland firefighters, creating unsustainable workloads, inadequate pay and benefits, and a dwindling trust in agency leadership, leading to 3 out of every 4 active wildland firefighters at the federal level considering leaving the workforce. This cannot stand. Congress has to intervene, and we have to work together to advance, as I said, a comprehensive approach to addressing the wildfire crisis. Now, you'll hear from many of my colleagues today, every one of them are leaders in their own right who have championed efforts over the course of the last several years to increase wildland firefighter pay, to do right by our wildland firefighters, to improve forest management. We've made great progress on every single one of those fronts, but more must be done. And so that's why we're here today, to sound the alarm as we work together to make progress on that front. So with that, no one, of course, knows that more intimately than the folks standing behind us, and that includes the National President of NFEE, Randy Irwin. Thank you, Randy, for joining us, and we'll hand it over to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you, Congressman Neguse, for holding this press conference, and for all the other members of Congress here to support this cause. Greatly appreciate you all being here. Also need to thank all of everybody who works for the Forest Service, caring for our public lands. Thank you all for the work you do every day. Can't thank you enough. So I am Randy Irwin, National President of NFE. We represent 110,000 federal workers nationwide, including 20,000 at the U.S. Forest Service. They do incredible work for us. And, you know, we got folks, an army of folks in Washington this week, up on Capitol Hill, pleading with lawmakers to stand up to this administration and do not allow this administration to dismantle the U.S. Forest Service, which is what they're trying to do. So at the end of March, the Trump administration announced a reorganization, air quotes on reorganization, of the U.S. Forest Service. In reality, this is a dismantling of a beloved 121-year institution that maintains the American people's public lands, the American people's public lands. And make no mistake, this is a dismantling of the Forest Service as we know it, and it is both reckless and illegal. 2026 appropriations law passed by this Congress explicitly prohibited the use of funds for government reorganizations without prior notice and approval from Congress, and that did not happen. Okay, this sweeping dismemberment of the U.S. Forest Service was announced unilaterally by this administration with no involvement or authorization from Congress. So what are you going to do about it, Congress? What are you going to do? Are you going to allow this administration to just ignore your directive? Are you going to allow this administration to trample on Article 1 of the Constitution? Now, I got to say, a lot of our Democratic friends are here standing, you know, for public land, for the American people's public lands and the workers. I am getting nothing but silence on the Republican side of the aisle. And that's a disgrace because that's where these forests are. It is in their districts, and they're not having the backbone to stand up against this administration. So I'm calling on members of Congress to do your job, pump the brakes on this out-of-control administration before another cherished institution, the U.S. Forest Service, is destroyed. And make no mistake, that's what they're planning to do. Okay, it would do irreversible harm, widespread and irreversible harm if they do what the Forest Service is planning to do. Eliminating regional offices that serve as the backbone of local coordination for wildfire response, forest management, and interagency operations. This is serious stuff, people. It would close 57 research facilities spread all across the country in 31 states, dismantling decades of locally based science that cannot be replaced. It would jeopardize the congressionally mandated forest inventory analysis program, which is essential for national forest data, climate reporting, and industry forecasting, and it would put 82 experimental forests at risk. Once disrupted, that investment is lost forever. The taxpayers' investment made over decades, lost and gone, for no reason whatsoever. And this is not efficiency; it is the reckless destruction of institutional knowledge, scientific capacity, and operational readiness. If this demolition of the Forest Service is allowed to happen, it will be a national travesty that we will regret for generations. So Congress, please step in and stop this administration from taking any further action to dismantle the U.S. Forest Service, as you have already instructed this administration to do. Thank you for your time.
Good morning. My name is Max Alonzo. I am a former U.S. Forest Service employee, wildland firefighter, union representative, and I'm currently the National Secretary Treasurer of this great union, National Federation of Federal Employees. We are currently witnessing the biggest threat to our public lands in our lifetime. The actions that are currently taking place by this administration and the agencies that they control are jeopardizing the safety of American communities and the preservation of our public lands and natural resources. This proposed reorganization will not just be devastating for Forest Service employees. No, this will negatively affect local economies, recreation opportunities, natural resources such as clean drinking water that all Americans benefit from every single day in this country. And make no mistake, my friends, make no mistake, this reorganization is not about government efficiency. This is just another chess move to hand our public lands over to the highest bidder so they can come in, they can drill, they can extract, they can mine, they can cut our natural resources that we own as Americans. And then they're going to turn around, they're going to try to sell it back to us. All right, so this has been masked as a reorganization in just another step to make sure that this agency fails, okay? They're slashing budgets, they're firing critical employees, they're forcing these workers to move across the country or just quit their careers that they've spent a lifetime investing into. Last year, fuels reduction on our national forest lands was cut by 40%. 40% reduction, or 40% cut in fuels reduction. As we go into one of the possibly the roughest years of fire that we've seen in decades. This is not what efficiency looks like, okay? This is what it looks like when you are setting something up to fail so you can justify putting it into somebody else's hands. That is all that's happening right now. And let me be clear, this reorganization is laying the groundwork for the American people's lands to be sold off to the highest bidder, okay? We cannot let private interests limit access to our hunting, fishing, and recreational lands, okay? We cannot let private interests steal our natural resources and ravage our environment. We cannot let private interests destroy the public lands, the American lands that Americans have cherished and used for centuries. I refuse to let this administration take the sacred mission that our public servants and our union members have dedicated their life to away from them, okay? And I refuse to let this administration destroy the Forest Service, the agency that I was proud to serve for many, many years. Congress must stand and join us in this fight. I just want to thank Representative Neguse and members of Congress for always standing with our wildland firefighters and standing with us during this time that we fight to save our public lands. Thank you.
Thank you. I think our next goes to it, ranking member.
All right, thanks, folks. Hi, I am Congressman Jared Huffman. I am the ranking member of the Natural Resources Committee, and I represent California's 2nd District, which unfortunately is also very prone to extreme wildfires. The effects of climate change and misguided fire management have turned what used to be a normal part of nature into something that all too often is catastrophic and deadly. The federal government should be taking urgent action right now. And at the very least, we shouldn't be making things worse. But that's not the case under this administration. This administration has been firing staff, dismantling agencies, attacking the science that informs firefighting efforts. Public lands, communities, and firefighters have been pushed to the brink. And as you've heard from several people already, we're heading into what may be one of the worst fire seasons in recent history. We have to do better. We must do better. And Democrats, under the leadership of my colleague Joe Neguse and the other colleagues you see with me here today, believe that we have the ideas ready to go to help us meet this moment. Policies that can keep our communities safe, our lands resilient, and our workforce strong. Bills to combat climate change, to make wildfires less extreme in the first place. Bills to make sure firefighters have good pay, health care, and the equipment that they need. And you know, this whole effort to dismantle and hollow out the Forest Service and other public land agencies is not coming from people who understand the threat of wildfire. It's coming from ideologues down the street at the Heritage Foundation who have never been on the front line of a catastrophic wildfire, who've never been in the emergency shelters where families who just a few hours earlier had a home are desperate because they don't know what to do, and they're there with their kids and their pets and whatever belongings they could scrape together as they were evacuated. They've never been to the local assistance centers that FEMA stands up in the aftermath of one of these catastrophic fires, and yet they have these crazy ideological schemes like Project 2025 to just hollow out these agencies that we depend on. It's a terrible, terrible idea, and it is unfolding right now as we head into one of the worst fire seasons we've seen in many, many years. So Democrats are working with partners, including the brave firefighters we've got with us here today, to champion ideas that will meet this moment and protect our communities. We have to treat this like the emergency it is. We cannot afford to do anything less. With that, I'm going to hand off to Jenny Kotek, the president of NFFE FSC, U.S. Forest Service Environmental Services.
Good day. As the Congressman has said, I'm Jenny Kotek, the Forest Service Council President for the National Federation of Federal Employees, and represent nearly 20,000 bargaining unit employees within the Forest Service. I first want to thank all the members here that are willing to speak on the behalf of the threats that are for the U.S. Forest Service and our public lands. Last year, our employees were threatened by the administration through cuts to our probationary employees, DOGE canceling contracts, the initial release of the USDA restructuring, while offering an unheard of and questionable deferred resignation program. Through these tactics, we saw the loss of 5,800 employees. Congress then obligated the USDA to open a public comment period that overwhelmingly had negative feedback regarding the proposed restructuring. Fast forward to today, in March, at the end of March, the largest dismantling in the history of the Forest Service was announced per press release, and it was at the same time released to our employees and to the union, all at the same time. This, like has already been said, is all 9 of our regional offices closed. The headquarters moved across the country. The majority of our research facilities shut down across 31 states. 6,500 employees potentially to lose their jobs or being threatened to relocate or resign or have their jobs changed. We did a union survey of our bargaining unit employees that responded 93% would not relocate if forced to, thus probably giving them the opportunity only to resign. And there is a fact that should stop everyone cold, has been mentioned already, but roughly 40% of these employees that are under threat have high fire qualifications for our incident management teams and running all kinds of our America's first responder incidents. This could be really, really devastating to our country and to our people. And like said, this is happening in a year where our fire season is burning more than twice the 10-year average. Many of these employees that are at risk are also, their roles are to ensure that we meet congressional obligations like considering public input, providing sustainable timber resources in rangelands, analyzing for threatened and endangered species impacts, protecting archaeological resources, adhering to tribal agreements, and more. The reorganization is being framed as an act of efficiency and cost savings, but the agency's own numbers do not add up. Many buildings being closed have critical deferred maintenance needs, and the many of our research stations that are set to be closed have a zero cost to the universities that house them. The administration's proposed 2027 budget zeroes out the entire Forest Service research, private and state and tribal forestry accounts, along with other major cuts throughout the agency. This is not a reorganization, this is a termination of statutory work the Forest Service is mandated to accomplish. We are on the precipice of irreversible harm to our Forest Service. You cannot unsell a building or undo forcing experienced employees to choose between uprooting their lives or leaving the agency. Some of these, once lost, do not come back in our lifetime or our children's lifetime. Our union is what stands between the agency and that cliff. And just because we have the right to bargain the impacts of the decision does not mean we agree with the decision. As a union, we fight this. We stand for our important work that deliver to the American people to keep treasured public lands in public hands, to protect the mission of our agency, a mission we proudly carried out since 1905. I implore my colleagues within the agency to not live in fear. A process like this is one built to run on fear. It counts on us to keep our heads down, praying the axe falls somewhere else. It will not. When they come for one of us, they come for all of us. The land steward, the scientist, the firefighter, the colleague 3 doors down whose name is on the list to be cut. Today, I ask you all, especially our elected representatives, to call to action. I ask my colleagues to tell the truth about what's happening using whistleblower protections, American citizens and organizations with public land interests to speak out and talk to Congress. And our senators and congressional representatives, please demand the answers and hard facts about the reorganization and what those will have on our mission. Demand clear sources of funding that meet your congressionally appropriately intended for those funds. Require independent cost-benefit analysis before implemented. And please, as you did last year, take a hard look at the 2027 budget and keep our Forest Service funded. Let us all stand together, meet this moment in history, and save the national forests for our public lands and the U.S. Forest Service. Thank you.
Is there a firefighter going before me? It's me. All right. Good morning. First, thank you, Representative Neguse, for bringing us together, my colleagues for standing with us, and our firefighters who showed up to make sure your voices were heard, and our NIFI employees. Our firefighters, every year you run toward danger while everyone else evacuates. You leave your families behind to protect the places we love. You breathe smoke so our communities can breathe easier. You save homes, businesses, forests, and lives. You deserve more than gratitude. You deserve a government that protects you as fiercely as you protect us all. For nearly 30 years, the federal government has known that wildland firefighters face serious long-term health effects from smoke. Meanwhile, structural firefighters began using respiratory protection in the 1970s. Yet here we are in 2026, still sending wildland firefighters out with bandanas into catastrophic fire conditions without the preservation and the protections they deserve. This is a moral failure. This is a government failure, and I am fighting to change that. I represent Oregon, where wildfire season is reliable. It is our 5th season every year. It is a defining reality of our communities, and a member of my own family serves as a wildland firefighter. I understand the sacrifice that you and your families make every year. I'm also the first pulmonary and critical care physician to ever serve in Congress. That means that I have seen things no other member has. The heat burns, the smoke harm that people who have been ravaged by wildfire suffer, airways destroyed, and bodies pushed to the limit. Protecting wildland firefighters is one of my top priorities in Congress because I know exactly what's at stake. That is why I'm proud to announce forthcoming legislation that I developed in direct partnership with our firefighters, with NIFI, and with health experts who want to close these gaps. This legislation is built around a simple idea. Protecting firefighters' health should be treated as operational certainty, not an afterthought. It strengthens coordination across the federal government, makes permanent the Wildland Firefighter Health and Wellbeing Program, directs OSHA to develop an occupational health standard specifically tailored to the risks wildland firefighters face, and invests in the research needed to optimize respiratory protection in the field. It also says something simple. When you come off the fire line, you get time, you get paid to shower, decontaminate your gear, and reduce toxic exposures you carry home to your family. You deserve that. We are finalizing the details of this legislation to ensure strong introduction and put it in the best possible position to pass and be enacted. And this legislation would not be possible without the National Federation of Federal Employees. For years, you have refused to let this issue be ignored. The firefighters standing behind me have done their job. They have protected our communities. They have protected our forests. They have protected our families. Now it's time for us to do our job and protect theirs. And thank you very much. With that, I believe I am handing it off to Josh Harder of California.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Josh Harder. I represent California's Central Valley, which has been one of the real epicenters of these devastating fires over the last couple of years. I've met with many families who have lost everything in a fire. We've dealt with smoke inhalation in an area that already has some of the highest rates of childhood asthma anywhere in America. And I've met, of course, with the wildland firefighters who are on the front lines and yet not getting the support in Washington that they deserve. There are two things that we really need to be able to fight these fires better. One, we need to prepare and prevent. We need to do a lot more fuel management than we're doing right now. And two, we need more people. We need the researchers, we need the scientists, and of course we need the frontline firefighters that are out there risking their lives in these fires, running to the danger to keep our homes and communities safe. Right now we're working backwards on both of those issues. We are seeing an administration that is cutting our fuel management programs that are intended to prevent these fires from getting out of hand in the first place, and we are seeing an enormous risk to the Forest Service and the way we fight these fires by firing many of the researchers and scientists that are critical and putting at risk the jobs of many wildland firefighters that are, again, putting their lives on the line every single day. So we need to make sure that we are treating this with the bipartisan urgency that it deserves. We have to keep our duty and our promise to those who stand between our families and disaster, and I look forward to working across the aisle to deliver for our firefighters and our communities in need. Thank you.
Who's next, Josh?
It is Justin Brown.
Thank you. My name is Justin Brown. I'm the National Federation of Federal Employees Council Vice President in the Forest Service for California. I've been a wildland firefighter for 17 years. So what we've seen since the beginning of this administration is DOGE came in and immediately started cutting workers under the guise of efficiency. They were cutting civil servants that joined this job to protect our public lands. We don't do it for the pay. And as a firefighter, we can't do our jobs effectively without these people, without the scientists giving us informed scientific backing to fight these fires, where to burn properly, the prep work that goes into a burn, the logistical support on our incident management teams. We've seen a decrease in the overall number of our incident management teams nationwide. That does not sound like efficiency. That sounds like it's leading towards a dismantling, right? And then we went into this, the reorg. And I don't know how they thought that this was going to make it better for us, but they started pulling folks across the country, right? That uncertainty between us and our fellow workers of where we were going to end up, who was going to be able to pick up the slack. So it put the burden on those of us that stuck around. And we did so out of the love of our public lands. We do this job because we love our public lands. I don't see how cutting budgets for the Forest Service, reorganized, shuffling people around, and then potentially pulling firefighters out of the biggest wildland fire agency and putting them under DOI is actually going to make anything more efficient. It seems like it's just a step-by-step road towards dismantling the agencies that care for our public lands. And I know every single person that works for the federal government within these agencies, as well as a majority of the public, wants to keep our public lands. They want them to be run efficiently. I personally hunt and fish all the time. That's why I joined this job. It's an outdoor job. We do it because we love it. So I call on Congress and I call on the American people, act. Call your reps every day. Ask them why they are doing this. Ask them to be transparent and show you the actual numbers. Thank you.
Nice. Good. Thank you, Justin. Good morning, everybody, and let me thank Assistant Leader Neguse and, of course, my colleagues who stand behind me, the firefighters that are here, and, of course, the National Federation of Federal Employees who represent the federal wildland firefighters. I am Jimmy Panetta. I represent the 19th Congressional District of California. And as I say it, we have a lot of beauty, we have a lot of bounty, and we got a lot of wooey, for those of you who know what that is. That's the wildland-urban interface. Therefore, many communities in my district, as we see throughout California and Colorado and throughout the country, are very vulnerable to wildfires. So we value our prevention efforts, we value our suppression efforts. And as we've heard from the speakers today, and as many of you know, both of those are being gutted by this administration. Now, when it comes to suppression, you're seeing not just firefighters, but Forest Service agents. You're seeing researchers being cut. And when it comes to prevention, trust me, we value our firefighters, especially when it comes to suppression. Our local, our state, and our federal firefighters. But the problem is what I've seen in my district. It's not just about the federal government failing them. You're seeing federal firefighters leaving for better pay for other agencies. I see it with federal firefighters going to CAL FIRE in California. But that's why I'm not here just to talk about the problems. I'm here to put forward solutions. It's why I support Representative Neguse's bipartisan legislation, the Wildfire Fighter Paycheck Protection Act, which will increase and protect the pay we authorized in the Bipartisan Infrastructure, Jobs, and Investment Act. It's also why I authored and introduced the Support Our Firefighters Act, so that we can permanently lift the cap on overtime pay for federal firefighters and make sure there is a proper rest and recuperation after the firefight. Look, I realize that in Washington, D.C., yes, of course, especially with this administration, we see a lot of disagreement. We see a lot of division. But I believe that there are certain solutions. There are bills out there that we've worked, yes, and even in a bipartisan basis, like the ones I've talked about, that actually demonstrate that we agree that it's not just federal firefighters who should get paid, but that their pay should be equal and commensurate with the dangers that they face, the service that they provide, and the protection that they give to us, to our communities, to our home, and absolutely to the safety for our families. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Panetta, and thank you, Representative Neguse, and to our firefighters. This is an important conversation. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us here today. My name is Congresswoman Janelle Bynum, and I proudly represent Oregon's 5th Congressional District. And I'm going to name my counties by name because they need to be heard. They are the American people who are experiencing wildfires. It's Marion County, Lynn County, Multnomah County, Deschutes County, Jefferson County, and Clackamas County. All of us standing here today know wildfires pose more and more of a threat to our communities each year. And as representatives from states with dangerous wildfire seasons, we understand how important it is to address this threat early, and that there's no reason for this to be a partisan issue. Now, I have the personal experience of being a wildfire refugee back in 2021. I remember my daughter was just entering college and everything was online. And we received a go notice. And I told the kids, pack up everything that's important to you that we can fit in the car. And of course, they packed up all of our pictures. They packed up our pictures, and my oldest daughter also packed up a dress. And she said we didn't know where we were going, but she said in case we ended up in the South and we had to go to church, she was ready. This was also a time where my kids were playing sports, and we had a business, and I was in the legislature. We saw concerts being canceled. We saw soccer games being canceled. We saw learning being canceled, agriculture, our fruits, our vegetables, our grapes, all being canceled. Businesses had to close. So a wildfire is not just something that you see on TV and the sky is orange. Learning was disrupted. My daughter was in the airport while she was taking her college classes and had to explain to her teacher and her classmates that she was fleeing from a wildfire. So I'm concerned about what's going to come this season. After a prolonged drought and historically low snowpack, Oregon is on high alert for severe wildfires. And on top of that, this administration has continued to cut the resources our firefighters rely on, as if it's a joke. I've worked across the aisle to address this issue by introducing and passing bills to prevent drones from delaying wildfire response and also to help victims rebuild after disaster strikes. But the truth is, if we're not adequately prepared, those efforts can only go so far. And so now is not the time to make life harder on our firefighters and our families. Now is not the time to ask firefighters to do more with less. And now is not the time for Washington to take its eye off the ball. Now, I'm a mom. I have 4 kids. I don't play about my kids, and I don't play around about the safety of my constituents. And neither should this president. Thank you. Buzz?
First of all, I'm thankful for being able to speak here today. My name is Buzz Heddick. I was born and raised in Missoula, Montana, surrounded by public lands. Those public lands are really important to me and my family. That also led me to pursue a career in research after I was a firefighter for 7 years, which was a lot. And so the last 39 years I've been in research. Currently, this reorganization efforts are resulting in closures of my research labs that I represent with NEFI. And those closures are going to have a huge impact on the people I represent. They're going to have to move all around. A lot of them right now are homeless. The Portland lab is fixing to be closed here pretty quick. And our FIA program that I work in, they have no home. And that's just not the way the Forest Service should run. So the data I collect in 2028, that's going to be 100 years of data that we've been collecting for our national forest systems, pretty much since the inception of the Forest Service. And what does that data provide? Well, that data provides a whole bunch of things. It provides data that's for things like the Resource Planning Act that we're mandated by Congress to provide. It's used by a lot of industry leaders for forest management and that kind of work. Universities use our data constantly. We're getting requests almost every day. And I really think that this research just has to continue. We can't let this fall by the wayside. If we want to continue to have really good management of our forests and rangelands, this has to continue. This data cannot be lost, and once it's lost, it's going to be pretty much gone forever. And I just don't want to see that happen. The public lands, I think, should be basically, managed for future generations. It's not just for us. This is for future generations to ensure that we have, proper forest management, clean water, clean air, things that Congress is also very, very interested in. They want this as well, and I think that we should get more bipartisan support for this. And we just cannot let this research fall to the wayside. It's just too important for our management and for the American public and for all future generations. So for those reasons, I'd ask that this reorganization kind of stop. Let's think about this and get this right for all of us in the long run. And that's what I have, so thank you.
Thank you all for joining us. I am happy to open it up to questions if anyone has them. Yes?
In a letter recently, the Deputy Secretary Baden said that during the Biden administration, there were too many people hired in the Forest Service under the IRA.
I'm sure one of you should take this.
If you all think that's sustainable and what he said, if you agree with what he said in his letter.
I absolutely disagree. We've heard how much many of our federal employees have been cut or forced into an untenable situation where they have to resign or move their families. As we've heard, 93% aren't going to move their families in these positions, even though they're not riffing them, they effectively are. So these are talking points that don't make sense with reality. The reality is that this is a targeted undermining of our National Forest Service, our federal employees, and the stability that our communities deserve. And I welcome other folks.
I just want to mention that during the Biden administration, those excessive hires at the time was to combat a lot of our aging out employees that were retiring through attrition and other means. It was trying to catch up and make sure we had the next generation lined up. So I find that a big falsehood.
Other questions? Great. Thank you all so much for coming. We appreciate it. And thank you all. Thanks.